Alright, children, it is time to lock in. This video is going to be very important. So, the number one skill that you need in your business to cajillion exit in the next 5 nanoseconds, because I know you need your caffeine and you need it now, or else you're just going to be in a total mood all day, is accountability. Duh. Seriously. Duh. The issue here is every single client, person, business I have worked with, worked for in a job seems to be doing it completely backwards. People seem to be punishing accountability and ownership and hard work and results. And you need to stop it. Okay? You need to incentivize. You need to create positive feedback loop. Okay? So what do I mean by that? So I'm pretty sure everybody at some point in their life was a hard worker, right? And you kind of realize maybe when you were at a job or something, you realize if you stayed late, cleaned up more, you became more dependent on, and you had gotten more responsibility because you were dependable. And instead of getting an extra couple bucks as a thank you or a bonus, you got more work instead. Especially if you've worked a job, you know that's so true, right? So my mom is an extreme hard worker. I think I kind of picked up the skills from her. So, you know, instead of her getting rewarded for like going above and beyond, it's like she literally gets tasked with the harder units at her group home because she's a nurse to deal with, right? And it's like, of course she doesn't want that. She wants, you know, like what would be a good reward would be like, hey, maybe you do one double shift, like the start of it would be like the harder part, and then you can end on an easy one, right? So you can kind of balance it out. No, they're like, yo, can you just do the whole double in your heart stuff, right? In the agency space, like if I come in and I 10x a company, they want me to do it on every single account. Like some agencies have like 60, 80, 100 clients, and they're like, can you roll this out into a SOP and like roll it out across the whole agency? Instead of being like, hey, here's the Ferrari we like promised you for your bonus, you know, stuff like that. I'm not saying I want a Ferrari. I think it's a little, I don't know. I'd rather get like 10 Civics and start like a Turo or like a rental business or something for that amount of cash. But I'm just saying, you know, bad expectations, bad feedback loops create resentment and cause issues. So what you need to do is you need to incentivize accountability and ownership in your business. And the way I did it was through tracking. I did it with 3 separate things, which is journaling and like pen and paper, which was probably the best thing anybody could do. Sticky notes, and then project management softwares. I'm still kind of experimenting with the last one with the softwares. I haven't really found a good one yet. But the best one was probably the second one, which is notes, like these little sticky notes right here. So what I did was I would write down any big task that I had, that I took ownership of, that I was like a big win, and I just write it down, and I would put it in a bag full of other sticky notes. So anytime I was down, unconfident, yada yada, I'd stick it in, you know, shake it around, grab a sticky note, and it would instantly connect me emotionally, spiritually, whatever, with that old self, and it would remind me of that giant win, and it created a positive feedback loop. Correct? So that's it. You just have to figure out how to do it for yourself and your organization. The rest of this video, I'm going to be going a little bit more into the story time of trying to convey the importance of this and more just information, right? So the way I came across this concept, because a lot of people think accountability and like type A personality is like something you can be born with. It is nothing further than the truth. It is literally a skill set that you can condition and learn, right? So back in the prehistoric times before the dinosaurs roamed the earth in 2011, I dropped out of nursing school, and I took my my teacher from high school, who was a personal finance teacher, to lunch to like help me with my taxes or whatever, and he wouldn't let me pay for lunch. He was like, yo, until you figure out who you are, I am not gonna let you pay for lunch, and the next time you invite me out, I want you to know who you are. And I'm like, that concept still to this day kind of rattles my brain, because I'm always trying to like level up, right? So how do you define something that is ever growing, ever changing, It's like putting it's like taking a Lamborghini or like a Ferrari or like a McLaren, taking their engine out and like swapping it with like a Civic, saying you can only be as fast as this Civic or something, right? So to me, that didn't make sense. And at the time, Atomic Habits wasn't a book that was out yet, but The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg was out. And I'm kind of glad I got exposed to that first, because that was a better book to kind of convey the message of how strong habits are, where I realized every single thing we do is a habit. And who we are is essentially a sum of habits that we have, right? And I remember, like, I used to be so depressed as, like, I had a really rough journey growing up. And that lesson completely changed my life, because essentially it just gave me hope, because it just told me I can be whoever I wanted to be. And that is why I'm wearing this Kanye West jacket, because the whole message of Kanye's music is you gotta love who you are, you gotta be who you want to be, and it's like all about building your own self-esteem and self-confidence and like accepting yourself, right? Like to the extreme. Like he goes totally extreme with it, but he's got a point, right? Like you being born into this world, you're like a celebration. You should be celebrated. You shouldn't try to fit into a mold to be like somebody else. The caveat is you bring your own essence to things, right? So accountability is a habit that you can train up. You can learn how to be accountable with the things that you want to be accountable for, and you do it in the manner that best suits you. I'm not saying, go be like a military person that's like, up at 5:30 in the morning doing cold plunges and drinking coffee on an empty stomach, because that stuff will give you ulcers if you are sensitive to caffeine. You got to build your own routines and stuff of that nature. So that is where I kind of got the idea, because I was trying to get jobs. I couldn't really get jobs anywhere because it was a very competitive job market, and not being born in the States, back then things were a lot rougher for people, where like I literally wasn't even getting called back for like half the stuff that I was applying for. Nobody could ever pronounce my name right, whatever. Nobody even really tried. The attitude was very different to what it is now. So it was a whole different thing in those days, right? So I essentially became kind of a guinea pig for a course for dropshipping from my friends. The whole course was like an hour long. People would say it's garbage. I kind of, looking back at it, say it's kind of garbage. But at the same time, the simple things are often the greatest, because there's so much wisdom in the simplicity of things that you don't really get until you kind of dive deep. But in this case, it was a crappy course. Like, the dude was reselling stuff he got from masterminds, and he got banned everywhere. But it was enough to kind of get me going on my first store, and I learned a lot, taking full ownership and accountability for like my financial life. And the way I even did it was actually, I went extreme with meditation, because it started with my thoughts. I realized if I can't control my thoughts, how am I gonna learn to control anything else, right? So I went to the beach one day when the sun was coming up. Like, it'd be nice, I'm just gonna sit here and meditate for 20 minutes, and then I'll start that way. It'd be like a good anchor to like start this habit. And when I did that, I couldn't do it for 20 minutes. So I had a timer. I just kept resetting it. People were walking by the whole day, and I'm just resetting the timer, because every time a thought popped up, I would just reset the timer. Just like how that timer just went off. I would just reset it. And I remember leaving around... the sun had set, but it wasn't like too dark yet. I don't remember what time it was, but I remember I spent at least 12 hours. Like more than 12. Because the sunrise was like 6:30ish. I got there around 6:15, 6 o'clock-ish. And I think I was leaving around 8 to 10, somewhere in that time. But I didn't leave until I did 20 minutes of complete thoughtlessness in my meditation, because that was the first step towards taking accountability for my thoughts and actions, right? That was like the basic building blocks of everything else. And it was good, right? And then when I got into sales, and by the way, the only three things, I don't know if I already mentioned this, but the only three avenues that reward accountability and ownership are entrepreneurship, sales that are commission based, or day trading. Everything else you kind of get used and abused for being a good worker because they're just doing it backwards. And once I got into sales, even before sales, when I had to save up some money to start the business that I had to start, I was working just scraping decks because it was the only thing. My buddy helped me find this guy who needed help. Shout out Sean for giving me that job. And I remember we'd be out in the sun all day. They're just kind of listening to music, chilling, vibing, and it was fun. But to me, something wasn't right. So I had to just, I'm like, let me just start listening to audiobooks. I got permission. He's cool with it. Biggest life-changing thing right there. So huge shout out to Sean for that. So I ripped through 70 audiobooks in that time. And I realized, because I was also like really into meditation at the time, was like, if I can just let my unconscious get exposed to these concepts, I can use my lucid dreams, like go into lucid dreams and review the core principles and all that jazz to really absorb everything. So even if I didn't really get it the first time, I just kept going. And when I slept that night, I would kind of go over things. And it worked. Like literally every sales job I have ever worked, I became number one at within weeks. Not months, weeks. Every agency I've ever worked at, every marketing position I've ever been at, I have excelled and became the go-to person, the number one person within weeks. Not even by the end of the first month. And it's all back to extreme accountability. In business, it's the most extreme example where like you can literally start a business cleaning up messes, and there are 9-figure businesses out there that are just cleaning up trash. You can start a business in anything and be like, I'm gonna be the go-to person for making phones, cleaning up trash, making chewing gum, make a bunch of different types of gums, whatever you want to do. And you can scale it infinitely. Anything you want. It all comes to accountability, right? And the issue is these businesses, they kind of do it so backwards that people just keep kicking the can down the road. Like when I was at the agency, I showed up, and this has happened multiple times. Every time I show up at whatever new agency, because I've worked at like 5 different ones, right? Where they come in, it's always like $1 million something spent in ad spend, and they never have tracking set up. It's happened at least 3, 4, 5 times by now. It's insane. And they're like telling clients, I don't know how the clients don't leave, like spending 7 figures in ads and like not having any idea what's going on in their business, right? And nobody took accountability to just be like, yo, let me just audit this funnel, make sure everything is set up properly. It's literally what I did. And I was like, yo, you just have tracking that needs to be set up, right? And it's absolutely bonkers. Like this first client that I was supposed to work with, they're doing $600K a month. They're spending $5,000 a day on ads on Facebook. They have no tracking set up. You go to buy something off their website, you have to go from the home page to the catalog, to the checkout page, to the confirmation page. All of these different pages are on different hosting servers, and it takes 30 to 60 seconds plus to just transfer yourself. The catalog took more than 2 minutes to load. Sometimes it wouldn't even load. And the web developer is just sitting there on his phone like this, yada, 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 yada. And he's playing Pac-Man on the computer when I'm in the office in Singapore to like go over their stuff, right? And I stayed up half the night to come out with this crazy 20-page proposal to be essentially taking full accountability for 3 whole departments of that company for $7,500 a month. I told them I could give them easily $100K plus a month in revenue with this trade, right? And I'm like, this is extremely fair trade-off at the time. Now I'm like, I was way underselling myself. Like that was an insane amount of work for such a slow, like little amount that I was charging for. Because at that scale, I would essentially have to rebuild 3 entire departments. That's a lot of work. So luckily, they turned me down because they were like, hey, can you legally put this into a contract saying, hey, that you can guarantee us this every single month? And I'm like, at that time, agencies weren't as big as they are now, because like every unborn fetus and their mom is like doing an agency these days. So back then there were actually a lot of lawsuits flying around where, so like if I said I can make them 100K a month, 3 months later, let's say I come in and I make them $99,999 in profit, they could be like, hey, you said you're gonna make us 100K. This isn't 100K. We're gonna sue you, and blah 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 blah. And it was big in those days. There were a lot of lawsuits flying around in those times because nobody took accountability. They just kind of kept kicking the can around, just pointing fingers, because back then, there wasn't really much going on. Now businesses are way more competitive and stuff. It's a whole different landscape, but not really. But it's just a bit more neurotic nowadays, because everybody's on TikTok and like their attention span has gone to doo-doo. So it's a little bit more stressful now to do the same stuff. Back then, everything was a bit more chill, where they had enough time and be like, yeah, I'm going to sue you for $2. So that's why I didn't take it, and I'm so glad I didn't, because I took it totally personally, and I went full in on my own business, and I scaled it up to 150K a week in like a month or two. My infrastructure completely blew up because the supplier I was using was really bad, but I recovered the business, which technically went out of business 12 times. I saved it 12 times, probably more. And I got it back to a 7-figure run rate, and then I shut it down. So I'm like, I'm tired. I need a nap. I need a nap. But yeah, it all comes down to accountability, right? Like you take the things that nobody wants to do and you do it so good that you become the go-to person, and you will get your opportunities. You will figure out ways to inject it into other things, and the universe will reward you for it. I guarantee it, because it is something I have seen from all the people that have became savages, absolute savages in their right. They earned it through being hyper accountable for everything. If you watch the show The Bear, they're like doing a decent example of it, but I'm telling you, it's like 10x that. Easy. Especially if you have your own business. I guess, with the whole restaurant thing, there's a lot more moving parts involved, but with your business, everything can be quantifiable and kind of defined, and you can set up expectations and like windows of like goals, right? Like even people's behavior, you can kind of keep them motivated, figure out how to motivate them, how to incentivize ownership, because everybody says, they want to use AI to automate things, but they don't realize there's a giant law called the law of entropy, where if you stop paying attention to things, they start falling and breaking apart over time. You don't need automation, you need ownership. You need accountability. You need somebody in that department to take full ownership and be responsible for everything in that whole department. And that is how you build good teams. Then you have to learn how to be a good leader to those teams. And then you scale up the business that way. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm going to go take a nap now.